Hello and welcome to another track guide in the HYMO track guide series. This time around we're at legendary Nürburgring. One of my favorite tracks, obviously Spice still number one, but Nürburgring is for me right up there. In ACC, Nürburgring was the very first track we got. In the first build of the game we had Lamborghini Huracan and Nürburgring, so that was a track where you could experience ACC for the first time. It's a very well known track. It's been in so many racing games and simulators, and in the world of motorsport it's such a famous venue, Nürburgring, especially known for Nordschleife. Unfortunately in the game we only get the Nürburgring GP layout for the licensing reasons. Everyone would love to have Nordschleife in the game, but unfortunately that's not possible. Nevertheless, the Nürburgring GP layout is still a very interesting circuit, full of technical sections that require a lot of skill and a really well set up and balanced car. LFM this week is on Nürburgring. If you want to have a nice setup, you can head over to tracktitan.io. We have there all our HYMO setups. Recently we introduced safe setups for all the cars we're offering setups for, and the game itself had a little update, so Porsche and Honda got tiny changes. We took an opportunity to update all the setups for both the Honda on tracks that got affected, and for the Porsche I'm redoing all the setup for all the tracks, so in a very near future entire Porsche bundle would get updated with all newest up-to-date setups. Check that out, links are in the description. But without further ado, let's talk about Nürburgring itself. Let me take you for a tour around the lap with a time of 1:52.4. Turn 1, we start off with a hairpin and the biggest braking zone on the track after the main start-finish straight. The braking zone itself is after the king, so keep as much to the left side of the road, and just before the braking zone change your trajectory, so you're gonna prepare for braking on the outside parallel to the curb after the king. For the braking reference here you can use the exit road on the left as well as the 100-meter board. You're gonna be braking right after you pass those. Straighten out the car and brake parallel to the outside curb in a straight line. For turn 1, 2, 3 and 4 I'm keeping a lower brake bias to help me with braking and low speed rotation. After you pass the 50-meter board you can slowly start to point the car towards the inside and start trail braking towards the apex. You can spot the apex quite easily as there is a red and white bollard. Watch out, on the apex there is gonna be a big dip where the car is gonna drop. You want to make sure majority of the rotation is gonna be done before the car lands. When it lands and settles, go straight away on the throttle and release the steering to the outside, but then don't go fully all the way to the left hand side curb. Transition the car straight away to the right hand side of the track as you want to open up turn 2. It's not necessary to go all the way to the right, as there's quite a lot of grip in the middle of the corner. You can see where the rubber is laid here on the corner. That can give you somewhat of a reference where the grip is gonna be and how much you need to open up turn 2. Here a lot of people struggle and leave a lot of time on the table. The corner is really long and it's also blind. It's very difficult to spot where you should go on the apex, where you should go on the throttle, where is really is the exit. If the track is rubbered up, for the reference you can see where the rubber finally is laid on the white line on the inside of the corner. When finally it gets darker, that's where you want to apex the corner. So from the entry, slowly add the rotation all the way to that apex as you're slowing down. A common mistake that people do here is they don't look far enough into the distance for the references. So they're going into the corner and then they're cruising through the corner with a stable speed, not accelerating, not decelerating, and they're just looking for the references, but they're losing tons of time because they're not using the potential of the car. You need to look far into the distance for your references and attack the corner, slowing down deep into the apex, and as you hit it, then straight away start accelerating back, smoothly going on the throttle, releasing the car to the outside. Again, the exit is going to be difficult to spot, it's kind of blind, there is a little crust, so look deep into the distance for that exit and you're going to spot it. As you're coming over the crust, you're gonna see the red and white curb on the outside. You want to aim at it and release the car to the outside of the road to that curb and drive over it. Since you're going over that cross on the exit, watch out because the car can start sliding a little bit with the rear end as you're approaching that curb. Throughout the entire exit, apply the throttle smoothly and progressively. There's not gonna be many places at Nürburgring where track limits will be an issue, but this is one of them, and as always the track limits are gonna be the track plus the red and white curb. So as long as you have 2 tires, the inside ones on that red and white curb, you're gonna be all fine. Now turn 3 entry. You can see here on the right side where the green AstroTurf ends. Before it ends, that's the point at which you want to drive off the curb and start braking a diagonal line from the outside of the corner all the way to the apex. The apex of turn 3 is way deeper than you think, as the corner itself is very long and tight. Try brake as deep into the corner as possible. Watch out for the rear snapping if you're still running with a very low brake bias. The next big acceleration zone is gonna be the exit of turn 4. So here the exit we're gonna use just for preparation for the entry to turn 4. As you're on the apex, you can go aggressively on the throttle and rotate the car at low speed, keeping the car very tight on the exit. As you're driving off the inside curb, straighten the car entirely and focus on the entry to turn 4. Here is gonna be an almost immediate transition as you wanna turn in quite early from the very outside of the track. You're gonna be able to cut quite a lot of the inside curb, so aim the car in a way that your outside tires will just drive around the inside curb. Get the rotation done before you go over the curb, so go off the throttle to load up the front tires, make the car bite into the corner, and then just before you're gonna cut the curb, go on the throttle to help it climb it and straighten out the steering slowly towards the exit. There's still gonna be some rotation that has to be done as you're accelerating, so watch out for the rear snapping. The exit of turn 4, here another place where track limits are gonna be an issue, and here the track limit is gonna be that little piece of green AstroTurf at the very end of the curb, and where that AstroTurf ends, that's gonna be the reference to how wide you can go. If you want to use all the track to a centimeter, that's what you're gonna go for a reference, but the easiest way here is to just use the white line and then don't go with your inside tires over that white line. If you're using lower brake bias for the first stadium section like me, here you can maybe go back with the brake bias a couple of clicks up. Next corners, here the stability is gonna be now the priority. Position the car on the right side of the road now. You can see that on the outside past the white line there's a little bit of concrete. You can use that. You can see here in the replay there are the red cones, but they're probably gonna get knocked over by cars going over here during qualifying or race. So those cones are not gonna be here anymore. You can easily drive over that concrete just to open up the turn 5 as much as possible, but you're gonna only use that to position the car in a way that the corner is as high radius of a corner as possible. Before you go on the brakes, get off that concrete because of the shape of the track. If you would be still on that concrete and go on the brakes, you will actually bottom out. You need to exit that concrete, position the car already pointing left towards the corner, and then initially brake 100% in a straight line. You can see here the point at which 2 different kinds of tarmac meet. That's gonna be your reference to the for braking. When you see that line as 2 types of asphalt meet, that's where you brake. Initial hard deceleration in a straight line going towards the middle and the inside of the corner. The corner is cambered here quite a lot, and you want to use that camber to rotate you around the corner. Watch out, because as you're gonna be going off the brakes, you are gonna get into that camber, the car is gonna bite, and you're gonna have to watch out for the stability, as the car is gonna want to rotate quite a lot here. Patient here on the throttle. The closer you are to the exit, the less of that camber there is, and overall you'll feel less grip. You don't want to overdo it here on the exit, as that's gonna compromise the next one way too much. Open up turn 6 ever so slightly, and here really good and deep trail braking is gonna be required. It's one of those corners where spotting an apex is really difficult, but it's also difficult to get any sort of reference for it, similar to turn 2. The corner is quite long and you need to wait a bit until you get to the inside of the track. The track all the way from turn 5 is still here going down the hill, so you're gonna struggle for traction. Look for that late apex and be patient on the throttle. When you finally hit the inside of the corner, go on the throttle and release the car to the outside. You can use all the curb on the outside. The exit curb is quite wide, which will allow you to go on the throttle ever so slightly earlier than you would think. Now stick to the left as you're approaching the hairpin. Here try to spot a big wide concrete curb on the outside of the corner, on the outside of the braking zone. You're gonna use that as your reference and you're gonna hit the brakes when you're around 2 car lengths before that huge wide curb on the left. Initially hit the brakes in a straight line, but then quite early you can slowly start pointing the car towards the inside of the corner. The hairpin here is gonna be cambered quite a lot and you want to use that camber, and you're also going for a double apex, so you're gonna be entering the corner at a very high speed and bleeding off the speed throughout entire entry all the way to the middle of the corner. As you're slowly getting towards the first apex on the inside, start trail braking, and you're gonna keep on trail braking all the way to the middle of the corner as you're slowly opening up the second part of the corner and the exit. You're gonna want to end up somewhere in the middle of the road, and right as you stop braking and decelerating, go straight away back on the throttle. If you trail braked here nicely and the rotation was done early, and you maximize the usage of that camber of the road you get throughout the entry, you'll be able to go on the throttle and straight away release the steering, starting accelerating quite early. The car will keep on naturally rotating because the road is cambered, there's going to be a lot of grip. But you're going to be at the same time able to accelerate very early and start building speed. Similar to the exit of turn 6, we have a very wide curb on the exit, which you can use full width of, and that will allow you to go on the throttle out of the hairpin so early. Now, approaching the Schumacher S. Use the entry curb on the outside, but watch out, it could unsettle the car just a little bit. As you're coming off that curb, go just ever so slightly off the throttle to help the car bite into the corner. It used to be that, for example, Porsche could do Schumacher S almost flat. I think with the newest update, with the little aero nerf it had, it's not as easy anymore, and you don't really have to do it flat to clear it the fastest. So do a little bit of the lift on the entry just to help the front bite into the corner, into the first apex on the inside on the left. But when the car finally gets to the inside of the first part of the Schumacher S, there will be a lot of grip. It will finally bite. You can go full throttle, you can release the steering and accelerate out of the corner. The idea here is gonna be to try to carry as much speed through Schumacher S overall without scrubbing the tires too much on the exit and costing the car momentum and acceleration out of it. That's why, for example, Porsche could do it flat, but because you would be that ever so slightly too fast on the entry, you would have to scrap throughout the entire first part of the S quite a lot of speed and momentum from the car, and then it will accelerate out of the S with as high acceleration. So you do that tiny little lift on the entry, it just bites into the corner, and then it clears the rest of the Schumacher S at still almost the same speed, but it carries the momentum. Now, next corner. For the braking reference, you're gonna use the 100-meter board, as well as the point at which the AstroTurf on the outside begins. You're gonna go on the brakes around the car with maybe a bit more before that. You want to open up the corner as much as possible, so use that AstroTurf on the entry. You're gonna brake over it, but you're gonna be already starting turning as you're on it. So watch out for the rear stability. That AstroTurf is a little bit slippery, so the rears are gonna start sliding on it, and that will induce rotation into the car that you'll have to potentially control with a little bit of correction. Next corners here are gonna be cambered a little bit, so here there is a tiny bit of that camber. It's gonna help you a little bit with turning. Go to the inside, use that curb. You can cut it quite a bit. As you're exiting it, you can go straight back on the throttle. Initially on the exit, the corner is still cambered, so there's gonna be a lot of grip. You can extend all the way to the outside curb, but transition very early, as early as possible here, to the left side of the road to open the next corner as much as possible, and you have to do it way earlier than you think. Similarly to turn 2, here you really need to look deep into the distance. Take a big swing from the very outside and turn in quite early. Look into the distance for the apex. You're gonna want to apex again around the point where the rubber is finally laid on the white line on the inside. You can use that as a reference. Taking a big swing from the outside allows you to carry high speed into the corner, and you're doing it very early, so you're gonna be coasting and decelerating all the way to that apex. You're gonna get into the camber of the road, because that corner is again cambered to the inside. That's gonna help you rotate the car early into the corner, and as you're hitting that apex, you can already very early go on the throttle. It's a very difficult corner to get right, but when you get it right, it's extremely enjoyable. Here the curb on the exit is not as wide as on the exit of turn 6 or on the exit of the hairpin, so watch out, because it's easy to dip your tires into gravel, and you definitely don't want to do that, as we have the biggest straight on the track right after. Now the final NGK chicane. Extremely difficult braking zone and extremely difficult entry. For braking reference, you can use the braking board. You want to brake around 1 to 2 car lengths before 50-meter board, and here it's a lot better to take it easy with the brakes rather than braking deep into the corner. On the corner entry there is a little crust over which the car is going to be going as you're turning it in the corner, and you want to have all the braking done before that crust, because then the car is gonna go over that crust and then dip into the dip that's right after that crust. Before that happens, you want to have all your braking done. You can easily use the red and white curb, but don't go over those big bumpy curbs on the inside with the bollards. Especially the first one, it's very important to avoid that. After the car goes over that little crust on the entry and goes into the dip, it's probably gonna gain a lot of grip. You're gonna potentially need to control that with stabilizing the car a little bit with the steering and going on the throttle. But since the braking was done quite early before that crust, here you can already start going on the throttle to both stabilize maybe the car a little bit, but also just to already start accelerating towards the second curb and ultimately the exit of the chicane. The second part of the chicane, here you can use a tiny bit more curb. Depending on the car, depending on the setup, you will be able to clear that big bumpy curb, that big sausage curb on the inside. But it's important to do the transition before that, to unload the right hand side tires so they're able to climb that curb and clear it with no issues. Because if you're gonna hit it when the car is still turning left and the right hand side tires are still loaded up, you're gonna clatter into that curb and potentially launch into the air and completely unsettle the car. Avoid that. Get through the first part of the chicane in a way that then you can do the transition and unload the right hand side tires before you climb that second curb. Keep on your toes throughout the entire chicane. It's very easy to unsettle the car, but if you do it right, you can go on the throttle and accelerate all the way to the outside curb. If you're carrying a lot of speed, you're gonna have to climb that curb and use all the width of the track available. Here, approaching the last corner, the Coca-Cola curve, you can stay on the curb approaching it just to open up the Coca-Cola curve as much as possible, and then right as you're gonna be going on the brakes, just position the car slightly, change its trajectory so it's already pointing right, and then brake in a straight line towards the middle of the corner. Soon after the car settles down from the curb, you can start trail braking into the apex of the corner. You can use the pit barrier as a reference for where the apex is gonna be. Be patient, decelerate to the inside and wait a little bit with the throttle. As you're gonna be going past that barrier, go back on the throttle, but straight away release the steering, prioritize the traction here, make sure the exit is gonna be really good and clean as you're going onto a big start-finish straight. Since you want to accelerate as early as possible, you're gonna also want to use all the width of the track available, so you can use all that curbing and AstroTurf on the outside, just don't touch the gravel. Now it's just a simple run down to the finish line and to turn 1, and that was the lap of Nürburgring with a time of 1:52.4. Now I'm gonna play the full lap at full speed. So that's the track guide complete, but let's also touch on some overtaking opportunities in Nürburgring and overtaking spots. The best opportunity is gonna be naturally turn 1. We have a huge start-finish straight where it's easy to get a slipstream, and we have a huge braking zone into a tight hairpin. You can try to make the move on the inside, you can try to make the move on the outside, and depending where you'll end up on the exit, you can battle side by side, basically through entire Mercedes arena all the way to turn 4. But that's not the only overtaking spot. If you get great run out of turn 4 and somehow you can get to the inside of turn 5, you can try an overtaking on the inside there. If you get a great run down towards the hairpin, you can try to do an overtaking maneuver on the inside of the hairpin, but that's gonna be easily covered by another car that's trying to defend. Next, throughout Schumacher race, it's gonna be all about sticking as close as possible to another car and trying to get a slingshot on the exit to try to get to the inside or outside of the corner after the Schumacher race. There you can either try to overtake on the inside on the corner after Schumacher race, or try to stick it around the outside in preparation for the corner entering the back straight, where you can get the inside there. Overtaking into the chicane, it's gonna be very difficult. You would have to have a very substantial overlap, but it's doable, and the same goes for the last corner. It's a very short deceleration zone, but if someone messes up the chicane and somehow you can get to the inside, you can do a move there. Overall, on the Nürburgring, it seems like every single corner actually could be an overtaking opportunity. Depends on what situation you will find yourself in. It's just that some of them will be a lot tougher to execute than others. Regarding cars that are really good at Nürburgring, I would say that in the midfield the BOP is extremely good, but there are some outliers. BMW now is extremely strong, especially as a race car. But in very low temperatures the Porsche will excel with extremely quick qualifying pace. The rest of the cars though are very evenly matched, and Porsche and BMW are only a couple of tenths in front. So competing for the top spots in a competitive field, Porsche and BMW are gonna be definitely the choice you want to make, but everything else is also extremely evenly matched, which is really nice to see. But anyway, that's Nürburgring. Tell me in the comments how are you liking the track guide series so far, and what tracks are you looking forward to seeing in the future. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out Track Titan and HYMO SETUPS HYMO Discord with the links in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.